Okay, we have the Kaizen Reset Cleanse. So most of you guys know, I'm Ryan, and we're talking about the Kaizen Cleanse today. Today's cleanse isn't, I don't like to think about it as a cleanse, it's more of a reset, since it's really subtle. It's a spin-off of the Ayurvedic, which is the sister science of yoga. It's an Ayurvedic Kitri cleanse. So with the Kitri cleanse, we are still eating every day. We're not starving ourselves. We're just eating in a manner that is going to be beneficial to our system. So what I'm going to do is first, I'll just go through the basics of the cleanse, so the meat of the cleanse, and then we'll talk about the whys and things like that. So the first, how it starts is the first 5 to 7 days leading up to the reset, we start to have a little bit of a detox period as well. So 5 to 7 days leading up to that cleanse, we end up cutting out caffeine, cutting out alcohol, nicotine, processed foods, anything boxed, anything like that. If you can't cut it out completely, then in these 5 to 7 days, I recommend to at least half it, okay? So that's gonna be in the mindset area, but I want you to just have that in the back of your mind. Just because you feel like that's impossible for you to do, doesn't mean you shouldn't do something. So I either half those things or cut them out completely. You'll also be identifying what we call your dosha. So identifying your dosha is your profile in Ayurveda. So if you, in like Western science, we call a lot of the things like ectomorph, endomorph, and mesomorph, which are just body types. And this is very similar to that. It's like that mixed with the Enneagram. The Enneagram talks about like your mental profiles and things like that. It's just a way to see your tendencies, see what you tend towards. It's not a box that we put ourselves in, but it's just a framework that we can be like, oh, I do tend towards that. So if we know what we tend towards, we know when we're going into excess of what we tend towards. And if we're observant of that, then we can see when we get into that excess, what we could do to counter that, what we can do to balance it. Everything is polar, right? So we want to start to just bring everything to a median homeostatic position. So we want to just get into that nice balance where we're not too far this way or too far that way. And that's where the body and we like, and our systems just like to be. And everybody's is different. And that's why we have a dosha profile. Foods are chemicals, right? So just like some people have to take certain medications for something depending on their chemical makeup, it's the same thing with food. You shouldn't think about it any differently, because on that, on the breakdown, it reacts very similarly within our system. And if we can balance the foods on a consistent basis, then it's much more likely that the foods can then become more of our medicines than just macronutrients, right? When I used to write workout programs, when I used to write actual meal plans for people, I would take everything in their BMI, all that stuff, and I would base it off of just their macronutrient content, right? Calories in, calories out, protein, fat, carbs. And one, I found that it started to create a bad relationship, for lack of a better term, with the food. It creates this, food is there for me to be aesthetically pleasing, and if that doesn't happen, then it's not worth it or any of that stuff. But food is much more than just macronutrient content. It's micronutrient content. It's subtle content. There's energy and everything. We're actually, all we are is energy. So this focuses more on that subtle aspect. And eating lighter foods as well. So even meats and things like that, meats and animal products, I encourage people to, in these first 5 to 7 days, start to reduce. You're not cutting them out yet here, but you're starting to reduce. If you're already vegan and you already have them cut out, that's fine. But I encourage people to just start to reduce the meat products, because since there is energy in food, and those nutrients are in essence dead compared to other things, we just want to eliminate that for the time being. Now, I am a fan of eating meat. I am a fan of all that, right? Depending on where it's sourced from and things like that. I'm not personally a vegan or a vegetarian, but those foods tend to be harder on the system. And as far as a cleanse goes, it's just not to your benefit to keep a heavy amount of them in when you're trying to get your digestive system intact. So we're trying to give the digestive system a little bit of a break, right? So we don't want to just keep overloading it, because then we can constantly feel fatigue, because the body is working on digesting food more so than it is on doing other cellular activities. So we only have a certain amount of energy that we maintain. We want to make sure that we use our bodies efficiently, and this is a good way to do that. So 3 days leading up to the cleanse, this is an optional point. Usually I'll do these things, or I'll have, or it'll be something where it becomes like a longer cleanse. If you can do more than a 3-day reset, then you can enter these in. But by all means, if you feel inclined to do it, it will be okay. So we'll continue with the above. We'll continue with cutting caffeine and all those things, and have the PDF sent to you guys. And if you don't have them, you can contact me for them. But you'll continue with all the other stuff above. And the thing we can add is ingesting 1 tablespoon of melted ghee on an empty stomach in the morning. And what that does is, the melted ghee is basically clarified butter, but so I say eliminate animal products, but clarified ghee is one thing in clarified butter is one thing in Ayurveda that is a real staple there, because it has so many nutritional property benefits. The clarified ghee, what that does when you ingest it on an empty stomach, it's like almost like soap on your hands, right? The toxins start to bind. The idea is that the toxins start to bind to that ghee, and it starts to intention it towards your digestive tract. So the ghee is more of like the cleanser of your body, where it's just starting to pull the toxins into it and intention them out of your body. You can drink hot water with lemon about a half hour after, and then 3 to 4 times a day you drink warm glasses of water. I actually prefer, like, we call it CCFT. It's cardamom, coriander, and fennel, and that's just a great way to keep everything moving, especially for Vata doshas. You want to make sure you have that nice warming sensation with liquid, since that nature is more cooling and dry. So that's all on the optional side. We're gonna go into the 3-day cleanse now. So now this is gonna be the 3-day reset. This is gonna be the bulk of the meat and potatoes of your series here. So now we're gonna get much more strict with caffeine, alcohol, and processed. No added sugar and no meat. If the no meat is an absolute deal breaker for you, then it will be used as a garnish, but don't use that as an excuse. You want to make sure that you're doing your best to just eliminate it completely. It's only 3 days. You'll be all right. Now we're gonna get into what we're gonna be eating, right? What we're gonna be eating is something called Kitri. So Kitri is, traditionally, it's jasmine rice and split mung dal beans, right? So it's jasmine rice and split mung dal beans. The reason we use white jasmine rice is people like brown rice, these things, there's more nutrition content. And theoretically, yes, there's more nutrient density in other rices or grains, but white rice is much easier on the digestive system. And we're all about clearing out the digestive system and getting it to function optimally and giving it a little bit of a break. So when you pair white rice with mung dal beans, now you have a complete protein. So you have complete protein, good amount of carbs, and the way we cook it, you'll have fats with the ghee. So complete protein is something with a complete amino profile. So it's something that your body can get all the amino acids that it needs to function optimally. And this is why we don't just eat white rice. This is why we don't just eat meat. This is why we don't just do these things, right? So we want to have that complete amino profile along with carbohydrates and fats. So you'll eat Kitri. You can do it for all 3 of your meals if you like. What I tend to do is either I'll make sure that I can season them differently, or I'll have oatmeal, warm oatmeal in the morning. So warm oatmeal in the morning will be fine for this reset as well. But make sure it's warm, not any of the instant oats or what do they call it, overnight oats that a lot of people are doing now. So you don't want to have it cold in the morning. You want to keep your digestion going, and that a little bit of warmth will help with your digestive fire. Good question.
Is it like a steel cut or something like that?
Yeah, it's fine. I'm not too particular about the type, but yes. And what I would recommend is that you put seasonings in it, and then I'll do an aside. Another thing I'm a fan of it, I call it. So you see, like with a big thing now in this time is like the introduction of like the benefits of psychedelics and things like that. And then you talk about microdosing, right? I think about microdosing in relation to herbs as well. So you're just entering a little bit into it at each meal. So for my example, for my daughter, I'll like turmeric, black pepper, and a couple other things that I like. I will put in almost all of her things, and even like her lemonade. So I'll put lemonade, and I'll put a little bit of turmeric, a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of black pepper into it. Not to the point where she can taste it, but to the point where it's in there. And then she's getting a little bit dosed of that. And then she eats food that I've cooked with that thing. So she has that as well. Because a lot of kids don't like some of these herbs and spices. So that's a way that I like to introduce it, so that at least they're getting a little bit into the system at a time, and then it compounds. I do the same thing with me. I do with my teas. I do it with any of that kind of stuff. So for your oatmeal, my point was, so for the oatmeal, you would do the same thing. You can add in, I always add in a little bit of turmeric, a little bit of black pepper, cinnamon, maybe some star anise, anything like that, or anything on your, so if you've done your dosha profile, then you can look at the herbs that are recommended for you for balancing, and you can just put a little bit of that into it, and then you can have your regular honey or whatever you put in with it. Just make sure that when you're using honey, that you're not putting honey into piping hot things, right? Because honey is very beneficial for us, but if it heats to a certain temperature, then it becomes toxic to our system. So this is why I never cook with honey. I don't add honey to hot teas or add honey to hot oatmeal or anything like that. You want to make sure that it's a warm temperature, or so a warm temperature, just a warm temperature, just not hot, because those beneficial properties immediately go away and it becomes toxic in the system. Call it ama. So lunch would then be a Kitri variation, dinner Kitri variation. No excessive strenuous movements. So when you go on this, I know a lot of you come and take the classes. So when you come in, if you're on this system, just be like, hey, I'm on it. It doesn't mean you have to stop coming to class. You just be like, hey, Ryan, I'm on the Kitri cleanse this week. What should I do? And what we'll do is it's going to be something very simple, right? So you're going to pick a much lighter weight, go through it, probably have you do the same rep ranges so you're not blasting yourself out, and I'll have you breath regulate. So breath regulation is going to slow you down. That's just keeping your mouth closed while nasal breathing so that you can't overdo it. And then you will just do a little bit deeper, lighter stretches into cool downs and focus on breath work, right? So if you are coming to class while you're in the Kitri cleanse, just make sure you pull yourself back from where you normally are on that go. Yeah, so this is a time, it's a time to slow, it's more of a time to slow down and be introspective of your system, right? So since you are cleansing, it's still a cleanse. It's not an aggressive cleanse, but it's still a cleanse. So a lot of the same principles will go into play, to a lesser degree in some senses, to more of a degree in others, right? So we want to be very introspective of how we're feeling throughout it. This is going to carry over into your day-to-day life. Just like our slogan is move intentionally. You want to do everything with intention. And we'll talk more about that later. 3 to 4 times a day, you want to have your hot water or CCFT. body movement and light body tempering. So I call it body tempering. If you've come to class again on Thursdays, we have basically a self massage type day. This is going to be a little bit, that's fine for this as well, but I would like additional, right? So as you go throughout your day or at night, maybe get some coconut oil and do some light self-massage on any maybe joints that kind of bother you every once in a while. Top of the head is hugely recommended at the crown. I like torso, really. If you're doing it yourself, you're only gonna really be able to get to the front parts of you. But if you have somebody that can do light massage to you as well, that'd be fantastic for these 3 to 4 days. Well, always, but for these 3 to 4 days especially. Another option is something called Triphala. Triphala is a supplement. Triphala 3, it's made up of 3 different herbs, and it's Tridosha. What that means is that it's good for everybody. So it's good for all doshas. And it's a very moderate cleansing herb. It's optional, so look into it yourself to see if that sounds like it may be of benefit to you. But instead of doing like a castor oil or things like that, where you're gonna really just get a diuretic type feeling going, this is gonna be more of a subtle intention out compared to that. So depending on your toxic load, it may be more and more, maybe less. So just be aware of that. I'll get into you have a question?
No, I'll just,
Okay. I'll get into more of what the Kitri cleanse is and how to cook it in a second, but I want to go through all this really quickly. So breaking the cleanse. So breaking the cleanse, break fast, breakfast, right? So this is the reason why they say that breakfast is an important meal, because you're breaking a fast. Whenever we break a fast in general, you don't want to break a fast with a cheeseburger and a beer, right? Because you're starving for nutrients, and then you're going to give yourself this junk food, for lack of a better word, something super heavy. One, you're gonna feel like crap afterwards, and 2, there's just a better way to do it. You've already done 3 days of eating Kitri. As you come out of it, I would recommend to just almost repeat days 5 to 7, right? So you can keep going with the reset up to about 21 days. I don't, but you may, right? If you're feeling really great on it, then by all means, you can keep going. I wouldn't do more than 21 days though. I start to break very similar to the 5 to 7 days. So I'm still usually not drinking alcohol for about 15 days is usually my minimum from start to finish. So I'll do 15 days, so half the month, I'm completely cutting out alcohol, caffeine, doing my best to cut out processed, doing my best to cut out added sugars. And then from there, if you're gonna really do your best to maintain that as long as possible. Now, if you want to go socialize and have a few drinks with your friends, that becomes the time to do it, because if that's what you like to do, then that's what you were living, right? So you want to do what you like to do. We're just trying not to do it in excess. We're trying to give the body a chance to do what it needs to do. So breaking the cleanse, you want to do so slowly. I recommend throwing Kitri back in there every once in a while, right? So we're not going to do this reset. We're not going to do this reset every month. We're not going to do that kind of thing, right? So most people won't. So while you're in your day-to-day, getting back into your routine, I recommend using Kitri to just throw in there. Maybe instead of doing just white rice at your dinner, maybe use Kitri at your dinner instead. That way you have that subtle, easily digestive food that goes in there, very nutrient to all the dhatus, your subtle system. Integrate what you've learned about yourself, right? So you can see that maybe you're a little bit more clear-headed now. Maybe as you add things back in, you're like, oh man, I don't feel that great today. What did I eat? So it's a time for now, since you've taken everything out and you do feel more clear-headed, as you start to add things back in, pay attention. Like, oh man, I never realized that lactose made me feel this way. I never realized that meat made me feel heavy, or this type of meat made me feel heavy. I never realized that whatever it may be, I feel like I'm allergic to beer. I get bloated or something like that, right? So you want to make sure that you're intentional as you add things back in. It's a good way to reset, right? To get your baseline and then move forward from there. Okay, so again, why Kitri? It's a light food, light focused, and it's building your physical digestive system, just like we said before. It's complete protein, full amino profile, and it's customizable. So it can be customizable for your dosha. We do this, like I said, through your herbs. You can look at your herb profile. In Kitri, there are some standard herbs that we use, and that'll be on the PDF on the recipe. But you can also add in other spices and things like that you enjoy, right? So you don't have to eat the same exact thing every single day, even though it's only 3 days. You don't have to just have bland. You don't have to feel like you're eating bland mush every day. You can change it up. You can add different herbs. You can add different vegetables. I always recommend to just look at the vegetables that you should be tending towards according to your dosha. You'll find a few on there at least that you like, right? And that doesn't mean to cut completely out the other ones. If you really enjoy something that's not recommended for you, you can still put those in. It's all about balancing. You just want to take a little bit smaller portion of that relative to what is tended towards, that you should be tending towards. It's Agni promoting. So Agni is the digestive fire. Agni is just our inner fire, right? So it's our inner digestive fire, which I often look at as stomach acid. So acid is essentially liquid fire, right? So it's starting to get that into a good balance, whether it's too high for a lot of pitta types that live in hot climates and like spicy foods and things like that. It can go out of control, and now you have just a wildfire, or it could be too low. So somebody who is primarily kaphotic, which is a water and earth element, may have too low digestive fire. Now we're going to start to stoke that to balance that out. Same thing with vata, which is primarily air. Vata, it can either be super low or super high, because if there's no fire, then even putting air on it won't work. But if you put air on an already burning fire, again, that blows way out of control. So it's just a way to kind of find that happy medium for your digestive fire. It removes toxins and dead foods. So basically what we said before, self-inquiry, intentional examination. So you're starting to pay attention to your systems. And it's a great way, so speaking of the intentional systems, it's a great way to see how food isn't just body. It isn't just earth. It isn't just like physical. The foods that we eat affect our mind. And we know this, like I said before, I said a very evident point is medicines, right? Medicines, we take a lot of medicines for mind imbalances. It's very common for that. Well, foods also have an effect on your mind, on your constitution, all of that stuff. And being able to observe that gives you an incredible amount of power. That way, if you are a generally healthy individual, you will then see that you don't have anyone to blame anything on. Even if somebody pisses you off, your ability to deal with that in a rational way is not only affected by your mental strength. Your mental strength is supported by your nutrition. Your mental strength is supported by your physical activity. Your mental strength is supported by everything. So it's just a good way to see that, okay, I know that when I don't have enough water, I get dehydrated. When I'm dehydrated, I'm out of breath. Or when I'm dehydrated, I'm short with people. It's like being hungover. Hangover is a lot of dehydration, and people are short with people when they're hungover, things like that, right? I always use that example because a lot of people can relate. Self-inquiry, building a routine. Another thing I'm really huge on is building routine. Routine, so root chakra is where we gain the energy to support the rest of the chakras. So the chakra system, I'm not going to go into the chakra system, but there's 7 major ones, and we grab energy from the root and it directs it up. But that routine needs to be in place. So we need to have a container that we can start from and then expand that container from there. And the routine, so if we don't have a routine, for example, and people are like, I just want to be free. Well, that's fantastic. So I want to be free in essence is saying that you're not currently free. If I have a container, then I am free within that and I can expand it. If I say that I want to be free and I go and do this and that, and then I end up risking my health, then I am now a slave to a dis-ease instead of being free to actually do what I want within my created boundaries and understood agreement within myself, which are my boundaries. I'm not saying that you have to be a slave to your dosha or any of these things, but I would rather have a routine than to be a slave to a dis-ease. And Kitri is tridoshic as well. We talk about triplet. This is tridoshic, and you can make it even more customizable for your dosha with the herbs and added vegetables. Okay, intentionality. So intentionality is huge, and more we're going to start to see this in our modern science talking about these things. So the body, right? So the body we know is 70% water, ish. These are all approximations. It's approximately 15% earth or 15% earth or dense matter, 10% air, 5% fire, right? So that's an aside. We're going to go back to that in a second. There's been a lot of studies. An old one, I forgot who did it. That had 3 rice jars. One rice jar, he said, would always say, I hate you. One rice jar, he said, I love you. One rice jar, he would just neglect, right? And every day he did these things. And the one that he would say, I love you to, would stay, it didn't break down, or it took a very long time to get any sort of mold within it. The one that I said, I hate, when they said, I hate you to, got moldy very pretty quickly. And the one that he neglected was the most disgusting, right? So this is, there's all the same rice jars, cooked in the same pot, put into things at the same time, spoken to at the same time. This was an experiment done a long time ago. And that just shows you that these things have a memory. They have, your intention and your perception changes the molecular composition of these elements, right? So if we know that from that experiment and we are made up of these things, then your intentionality behind what you do is very important. And this is why if you do none of this, then cook at home. And when you're cooking at home and things are going crazy, maintain your peace. Do the best you can to cook that food with love. You're cooking for yourself. You're cooking for your family. You get to cook these things. You get to eat these things. You have the ability to be somewhere where you can do that all. So putting your intention into that, well-intentioned, will then nourish the body. Because would you rather eat the white rice that was in that? Would you rather eat the moldy rice? Or would you rather eat the rice that was absolutely disgusting, right? So if you neglect your body completely, it's going to be the worst of all. If you hate your body, it's not going to be great. If you say, I love you to your body, then it's going to be very, very healthy and needed. So 70% water. Water probably has the water has an incredible memory. When you get the water out of your tap, or if you're getting flowing water from a fountain, this is there's things that have been said that disrupts the composition. So when you get the water, let it rest for a little bit. Once you let it rest, if you feel inclined, then put a little bit of intention into that water. and then you can consume it. What I like to do, so that's not always possible for us, right? When on our go lifestyle. One thing that I like to do just to get a drop in the bucket is I get a copper mug. Copper mugs increase the ionization of the water, which is increasing the electrical content of the water. So I put in a copper mug. I'll leave the copper mug overnight, so at least I get this charged water into my system. The rest, you'll do your best. I keep another about 60 ounces in a metal jar. Do your best not to drink out of plastic. Really try to get yourself a mug, and copper mugs would be great. They just don't have that many great, not that many sizes. 15% earth, intention about sourcing, preparation, storage, and consumption of your food. Basically what we said with the cooking, but the sourcing also matters, that the animals are packed in together their whole life and they're living a junk life that is increasing that not so great energy. 10% air, intentional about the environment you're in. So intentional about the environment you're in, there's a lot, when we go out into the real world, the typical world, there's a lot of fear around the media and all these things, and that is all air. That's something that we're just sitting in, right? So it can be high anxiety. You don't want to be high anxiety in your head and then spend most of your time in an anxious environment. You want to combat that, counter that with some nature, counter that with just maybe a breathing practice. If you can breathe outside, great. That way you're gonna ground and get that breath within you. You just want to make sure that you give yourself some space. Air is space, right? Give yourself some space from the chaos. Find the peace in the chaos. Also, what breathing practice will do, it will shift your perspective, and epigenetics, right? Everything is perception. So we think that our genes just turn off and on their own, but depending on our mental constitution, our brain sends signals to the rest of our body in order to create that on and off switch. So that's a way that we can influence that. If we can take some space and change our perspective, then we can start to feel a little more at peace with ourselves, feel a little bit more at peace with our current bodies. Like, this is not a reset for aesthetics. Aesthetics is a byproduct of it. It could be one of the effects of it, but it's not the effect that I encourage here. This is not why I do resets. I told you all before that I got away from counting calories and creating macronutrient plans because it doesn't sit right within me to see people struggle over something that should be sacred, something that should be fun, something that we get to do. So it's just your perception. We have to start to shift our perception of ourselves before we can have anything that we say we want. And I'd like you to really examine what you want, not what does society say that you want. 5% is fire. Get in the sun. The sun is probably the purest form of fire that we can get. Has many health benefits to your body, and then you can identify really like what kind of, I think Xavier did a lot of this, I got this from him, was the fire inside of you. Like, what is your passion? What is burning up inside of you? And you identify that, and once you identify that, then we can come to terms with it, either make peace or pursue it, right? So it could be either something that is angering you or something that you're passionate about. You may already have that balance, but it's beneficial to see what the purpose of your fire is. Okay. So everyone will experience this differently, just like all experiences. Some may have cravings. Most of us will most likely have cravings. Withdrawals. If you're a big caffeine drinker, like we talk about, caffeine withdrawals can be a real thing, right? So just be prepared for that. And that's why it may be beneficial in these 5 to 7 days to half it first before you cut it out completely. Even alcohol withdrawals, even if you don't think that you drink that much, some people may experience withdrawals from that. Sugar, definitely, but those will go away quickly. The cravings for foods, don't mistake your cravings with hunger, right? If you're craving something and you're hungry, they're two different things. I forgot the name of the guy who really popularized fasting in the West a long time ago. He said us as Americans, there's very few of us that are actually hungry when we eat. Hunger and cravings are different. If you're hungry and if you're craving something and the Kitri is not appealing to you, then that is a craving that's most likely not a hunger, right? If you're truly hungry, you would eat that Kitri. But listen to your body as always. Still the difference between cravings and needs. Many people in the world don't get to plan a Kitri cleanse, right? So most people don't get to plan a Kitri cleanse. So just know the difference between your cravings and your needs. How much do I eat? So this is a big one that I get. How much do I eat of this? It's recommended in Ayurveda that an Anjali is about your food. So I would say this with one on top, right? So that is approximately what you will eat. You're not going to eat until you're absolutely stuffed. You're going to eat until you're satisfied. I don't want anybody starving themselves. You're not going to eat just a minimal amount because we have a war on carbs. I know this is a carb-heavy meal for a lot of people, but there is no war on carbs. Carbohydrates are an essential part of our nutrients. So eat enough, right? If you have further questions on that, we can talk personally, but eat enough. Eat so that you're not going to be hungry in 20 minutes. So when I do these kind of things and I'm like, sometimes I get pretty out of balance with my stuff as well. So I'll go into most specifically with caffeine, being up so early. So I'll end up getting pretty far gone on my caffeine sometimes. And to just go from, say, 250 milligrams of caffeine to 0 caffeine is pretty difficult. But I don't like to think about having this. For me, I like to try to completely cut it out. But for the first about 3 days, what I'll do is I'll take about 55 milligrams of caffeine and some B vitamins. And how I do that is, what I use is a stick packet from Arbonne, but you can use anything. If you want to know what I use, you can contact me. But 55 milligrams of caffeine is what I'll do with basically a B vitamin blend, and it's just not like a jolt of energy. It's just smooth in the morning, and that helps me out. Another option is, these are all options, right? If you can do without them, do without them. Another option is plant protein powder with complete amino profile. It's the same thing. The one that I use is rice, cranberries, and peas, and it's blended together to make a complete amino profile. Again, I use the same company, Arbonne, but there's a lot of companies that do these now. I just like Arbonne because I use them for other things. My wife is a distributor, and they taste good. Or I think Orgain does it. I'm not sure. There's a few other ones that I've heard of that are decent with the plant protein. I'm sure there's hundreds of them nowadays. So if you want mine, let me know, and if you know that you have somewhere to get the others, get them, but they're everywhere. Triple powder is the other option. We already talked about that. Intentionality mindset. And the mindset. Okay, so any questions or anything so far?
At the end, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and so the last thing is mindset. So I always like to, being my bottom line, I like to build in things as we go. And also that can get misconstrued as me being lenient. I'm not being lenient because I am not in charge of any of you. So there's no way for me to be lenient. What I'm doing is I am doing my best to encourage you to do these things, to give them a try. Just because I said it's okay to garnish with a little bit of meat doesn't mean that if you can go without, you should garnish because you have a craving. Me allowing you to do these things, or saying that these things aren't the end of the world, is me having faith in you that you are going to bring your best self in everything you do. So I'm not here to push you to do things, right? This is a take relationship. You take what you want from it. I don't give anything, right? So I'm giving you information. But I can give you all the information, and if you don't take the information and assimilate the information, then I can't really do anything for you. You have to want to do it. So just because I gave other options doesn't mean to go and do them. Now, if you know for a fact that there's no way in hell that you are gonna do the semi-strict cleanse, then you can add these other things in, right? Know yourself. I like to have the 55 milligrams of caffeine and the protein shake on hand for when I'm having a particularly rough day, or if I'm gonna enter this reset in a really hectic time in my life, right? Most of you guys know that I have 2 kids, one 3 and one 7 months. So things can get hectic, I understand. But it doesn't mean that we throw everything out because we messed up the first day of the reset, or messed up the first day of the reset. You still can come back and be like, okay, well, tomorrow I'm gonna do it better. And that now becomes more of a growth mindset. We don't wanna just have a mindset where like we have to be perfect, because then what is that saying? Then that is more of that calorie counting, macronutrient based theory where like, I'm doing this in order to be perfect. No, we are already perfect. We have all the potentialities that we could ever have. You already are a perfect potential. You just have to capitalize, we just have to capitalize on our potentials and know that when we get into a setback, that there is always a time to improve. That setback is now like, okay, why did I do that? Let me put some intention behind that. Okay, I can overcome it the next time. And even if you don't overcome it the next time, just keep going. You're gonna get closer and closer. Kaizen, right? Small improvements over time will compound to huge improvements. You guys have no idea how many times I've ping ponged back and forth. I went to 170 pounds at 5'5" in order to do some powerlifting stuff. And I was, on paper, strong in the barbell lift. I couldn't tie my shoes well. I couldn't do anything well. I hip flexor pain. I walked like a duck. So it's as soon as I started to integrate and feel what I truly wanted was health, right? I wanted health, and I wanted to enjoy the foods that I eat still. So I found my container. I made my container of holistic health, what holistic health looks like to me. And it became a smaller container than I was previously in because I had no routine. I had no boundaries. And what I've done over time, and what I'm going to continue to do, is increase that container. I'm going to expand it. And as I expand it, I find new ways to enjoy health. I find new ways to enjoy cooking, enjoy feeding my family, enjoy movement, enjoy giving of myself. And I think that is the biggest thing we can learn from this is a mindset. It's not about a reset. It's not about any of that. It's about learning what holistic health looks like to you. And that is my goal for you. And if you have any questions for me, you just let me know. Do you have any?
Hi. First time you go into it, I realize you're learning about your system and what foods affect you, and like kind of peeling things away and then adding things back in. How often do you think you need to do that kind of cleanse? Is that like a yearly thing?
That's why I like to introduce the Kitri into my meals, because I don't do it very often. I'll probably do it once, twice a year, and it depends. What I do is depending on how I'll look at my mental state, and I'll look at you. Once you do it 1 or 2 times, you start to pay attention, it becomes to be kind of intuitive, and then it doesn't even become about the Kitri, because it's like, oh, I just need to take out some things, and it's a step back. So I do it whenever I start to feel like I'm getting short with my loved ones, especially, right? Because they're usually the first ones to experience it, right? A lot of us can be really give our 100% at work and give our 100% everywhere else, and by the time we get home, our willpower, right? Willpower is there's a willpower meter, and so we start with a certain amount of willpower every day. And if we blow through that willpower and come home and we have no willpower, then we can start to be short. So once I see that, either I'm getting to be a little bit short, or if I feel like I'm getting like, if you get rashy or anything like that, and things that you tend towards, or for me being Vata, if I get like super ashy or super dehydrated, and hydration by itself, like drinking more water or salts isn't working, then that's something that I'll do. If I feel like I have zero energy all the time, that's what I'll do, which isn't very often, because once you're intentional behind it, then you'll usually be good. But I say at least once a year, do it, but you can do it up to every quarter, and I'll probably have it so that we can start to do it in here at the beginning of every quarter. Then I'll just have it launched. Whoever wants to jump in on it can jump in on it. So yeah,
So as proof, then
that'd be great. Yeah, good idea. So so that's what maybe we'll create like a little Facebook group or a thread, and then every quarter we can just all start it together. Whoever wants to do it can do it, and then go from there. That might be helpful.
Yeah, it sounds. I do like a weight monitoring with people at work.
Okay.
So every week we report where we are, which it's so little compared to this sort of thing.
That's great.
It's very superficial.
Yeah, and what I'll do with it is I will take my weight, and I'll take my body fat percentage, because I just like to know stats. But it's important to not, if you know that you're very judgmental about your weight, then it may or may not be beneficial for you to do that. But since I don't really care, and I encourage most people not to care, I look more at the body fat percentage than anything. The weight means very little to me. BMI even means very little to me. The body fat percentage is what I look for, because that's really an indicator.
How do you measure that?
There's body fat. We have a machine here that we have a little handheld that we can use. There's more accurate ways to do it. There's calipers. I find that a lot of it, they're a little bit inconsistent. What I look for is the body fat percent. When I am measuring it, I do it often so that you can see a trend, right? You want to see a trend going down. You don't want to stay at that high level. And super low body fat on the counter end is not beneficial. I feel the best when everybody's like, oh, there's 6% body fat. I feel the best when I'm about 10 to 12% for my body. I feel the strongest. I feel the healthiest. I feel that's just the way I feel. And when a lot of people will see that, they'll be like 10%. You look like you're lower than that, or you can look like you're higher than that. That can also be relative depending on water retention and those things, right? Mm-hmm. So as far as stats go, I like the body fat stats. Did you have something online? Somebody have something online?
It's me. Can you hear me?
Hey, what's up, Mira? Yeah.
Hi. No, you know what? You just answered my question when you were explaining about the holistic approach and how the Kitri will help you like dial in a connection with your relationships within yourself and around yourself. Because I was going to ask, I dialed in a little bit late, and I was going to ask, like, what are some of the goals and what are some of the results that people see coming out of doing this?
Yeah, so great. So if I answered it, great. So there are plenty. I have one of my clients and friends. She's done the 21-day one, and she says she feels amazing on it. Her body, she's done it about 2 or 3 times now. So she does it like 2 to 3 times a year, and she she's probably lost about 20 to 30 pounds as far as that goes. But again, me, I'm more concerned about the mental state. As far as that other stuff goes, that's fine. You already heard all that. I wanted to tell you something else, but I spaced. So that was okay. You got what you needed from that.
I did, thank you. And you could tell me on Monday if you remember.
Okay. That's good.
I appreciate the Zoom link.
Oh yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
And so, as far as that goes, I sent everybody the PDF, a sample Kitri thing. You can all like, and when you go in, another thing, when you go in and I say you start adding it back into your days, it doesn't have to be jasmine rice and mown down, right? So we can make different, like create your own version of your own Kitri. So you can even do like a quinoa and red lentil or something like that, right? So you can just do like a rice and bean blend after this. For the cleanse, I would recommend jasmine rice and mown down because it's very easily digestible. But as you go through and you want to add it back and forth in, just be creative, right? And you can just use the beans and rices that are good for your dosha, your beans and grains that are good for your dosha, and do the same thing. If there's no more questions, I think that does it. You good down there, Mira?
I think I'm good. I feel so bad because I have family coming to visit and I like really want to start this. But every time my mom comes to visit, I'm like always starting some new health kick. And so she's gonna be frustrated because she likes to go out to dinner. I'll be like, I'm on this thing. So now I have to like but see, I guess it's the whole purpose of doing this. I have to like figure out when I can devote the time and still serve myself and others around me. Because I don't want it to prevent, I don't want it to serve as a barrier, because then that's going to affect my mindset in doing it, and wanting to do it in the future.
Give yourself 3 days of yourself, right? So the more that we taking care of yourself is not selfish, and selfish is not a bad thing, like just the word, right? So if we can be more selfish, then we can serve others better. So fill your cup up, take 3 days, tell your kids that they're gonna give you foot massages, we're gonna get it. Just 3 days. The 5 to 7, you don't have to be super strict on if you want to start, because stuff happens, right? 5 to 7 days, you don't have to be super strict on. Those 3 days are what are really for you, okay? All right, guys. Well, thanks for coming. If you have any more questions, you know where to find me.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.